Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Emily Sterning with American Resiliency, here with an up to date climate outlook for all our friends in Colorado. Colorado's future climate is important to us all, especially considering how many cards you hold regarding the water outlook for the Southwest. And after that outlook for Arizona, I know a lot of folks in the region may be feeling more nervous, but I'm very pleased to say Colorado is on a good path towards resiliency in a warming world. I want to give a special thanks to AR community member Carolyn S. She's a longtime Coloradan for all her work in helping to orient me and get me the background I needed to help connect the numbers to the ground in a state where I don't have a lot of ground experience. So thank you, Carolyn. You put in a lot of hours on this one. As we move forward in this video, I'm going to get you all the details you need regarding this fairly low change outlook, as well as recommend important resilience actions for you toughies hardening up in this beautiful state. Who will be pleased to hear a large part of why your outlook is so good is because, just like at my place in Iowa, you all are already hardened against crazy extremes of all kinds. Colorado is not the destination for softies. It's more a place for people who are already cool with intense heat waves, major blizzards, and the occasional devastating in town flash flood. Normal stuff, right? I get it. And I'm going to get you the details you need on how much more exciting your local news is going to be. But first, we got to cover a little background. And I founded American Resiliency in 2021 and started making these climate outlooks. I called them 2050 climate forecasts. Back then, it seemed reasonable to think we'd hit 2C at mid century. That was the consensus science. But that was then. 2023, as you know from having been there, was a very serious year in climate. We hit 2C for a couple of days towards the end of the year there. You can see that in February, we were around 2C for a stretch of days. We're still waiting on the numbers for April. That'll be out about May 10th. But the March numbers came in. We averaged 1.68C according to the Copernicus Institute in March. And this is a high value source here. This is the European Union's climate outfit. So all that, it's got to force us to change our thinking. This outlook here, it's a 2C outlook. And as far as the timeline goes, we're going to find that out, you know? So let's check out the challenge level for Colorado at 2C. If you want to follow along with me, you can go to chapters down to all figures. They're downloadable after that link. I also sometimes use the atlas, which you'd be able to navigate to. When you check out Dustin's resources with me, it's important to know that all of them are data imports directly from the NCA Atlas. His work is easier to navigate, it's very reliable, and all of these tabs are fun. We use the Fifth National Climate Assessment because it represents the highest consensus climate science available. Your tax dollars paid for the development and review of this document, you deserve access to the information. But as a matter of congressional mandate, there's no direct funding for communication to the public about the National Climate Assessment. That made me so mad, I founded American Resiliency, the only nonprofit focused on communicating this important information to the public, and we run on your donations. Looking at a national overview for changes at 2C, we can see here in figure 1.14, Colorado is already looking at a higher change as you go west than as you go east, with a total range of warming from 4 to 6 degrees F. The western slope there is going to experience higher changes. I hear you folks are already feeling more warming on the ground. Let's go over to figure 2.11 and see how that warm up is going to fall around the year and impact the seasonal extremes. Here in 2.11, even from this almost unusably giant overview, I am seeing just what I would like to see, which is wonderful, cool summer preservation in the Front Range and the mountains as a whole. There's a whole lot of nothing going on there as far as additional days over 95 or nights over 70 in a typical projected year over a large portion of the state. Now, let's note that summer outlook isn't great everywhere in the state. Let's zoom in here. I brought up a different tool here. This is Dustin's total heat map. This is a good tool for us in this context because we need to look at an increase in days over 105 in parts of the state, and that information isn't fully visible in figure 2.11. Dustin made this tool for us. It gives a true total of increased heat, including data layers from the NCA5 of days over 95, days over 100, and days over 105. So out on the western slope there in Mesa County, where we've got Grand Junction, you're not looking at as big of a summer heat up as you might expect. You're looking at maybe 3 days over 105 included in this 20-day longer extended hot season. It really looks a little bit more challenging when you look out on the eastern plains there, particularly in this southeast corridor, where you can see that some areas are looking at 53 additional days over 95. And I am sorry to say, a full week of that is days over 105. The days over 105 threat is really confined to this corner of the state. we are seeing substantial heat ups. We're seeing another month of summer projected for that northeast corner of the eastern plains, but it's not as serious. We're really seeing an increasing difference, and we're already pretty distinct regions of the state. I'm going back to figure 2.11 though, and zooming in on changes to warm nights, to the additional nights over 70 in a typical year. And so far as we know, there's no hidden layers of data to this one. Here we can see that although that corner here, this southeast corner of the state, was experiencing really tremendous daytime heat ups, the nighttime heating is more mild than we see in many of your neighbors towards the east, where you're going to be impacted, but the impacts will be less severe than to neighboring agricultural economies in your immediate region. And what about winter change? Let's look in here. So here we are in figure 11.3. This is obviously too huge to be useful. So we're going to transition over to some SNPs, but we're looking at information directly from this figure. Aren't you cute? This looks fabulous, Colorado. I am really happy to see so much good news retained between the NCA 4 and the NCA 5 projections for Colorado. You're looking pretty stable there in the northern half of the Eastern Plains, but you are moving towards winter lows above zero in the southeast, which is a meaningful transition. That's going to potentially mean more problems with pests in the south than in the north of the Eastern Plains there. We see the biggest transitions in cold in the highest mountains. Everywhere else, including Grand Junction, we're mostly looking at an unimpressive 5-degree lift in projected winter lows. Now, I don't normally do this, but let's look towards the 3C projections related to these winter intensity numbers. Now, looking at this 3C information here, it's worth saying 3C is very far out from where we are now, and so our certainty in those models should be lower, especially considering the fact that it is really appearing that we did not have a solid enough understanding of Earth's deep systems, because we appear to be running into tipping points below 2C. But looking at this, looking at 3C data for what it is, not seeing it as a certain future, it's pretty alarming. There's the contemporary. In blue, that means you're getting under zero. You're getting a really cold winter, not 0C. A low around zero averaging means that you're well below the freezing point for much of the winter. That's the conditions that let you build snowpack. And look how much cold we're losing across Washington, across Oregon, across California, Nevada, Utah, Idaho. Although those central mountains in Idaho, they're the first bright spot that we really see as we look in from Washington in terms of snowpack preservation. Colorado, you're like a wall of strength here if we look towards the 3C projections. Your mountains are going to have reduced snowpack in these conditions, but you're going to keep holding it longer than so many others. I get myself all worked up with that. You know, some people, they think maybe you want to be by the ocean, get a moderating effect from the ocean. Yeah, get away from the ocean. More stable outlooks to the middle of the country. And now it's water time. All right, we've got more snowpack news incoming. I am aware of how much water you want, Colorado, and I am aware you want all the water information, as drought is always a threat hanging overhead in your state. Let's start out with figure 2.10. All right, so you're looking okay. The increasing drought trend is more confined to that corner here, the southeast corner. And I think, honestly, the drought trend area looks like it decreases a little bit for Colorado between 1.5C and 2, and you get more significantly increased precipitation. And then we see that continue as we move farther away from certainty towards 3. Alongside that relatively greater summer and winter heat increase in that southeastern agricultural part of the Eastern Plain, I have to say that's looking really unfairly challenging to that corner right there. But the rest of the state, that's really a very limited area where the drought trend is increasing, looking pretty stable, even through 3 and even through 4C. But let's get some more details. We're going to go over to figure 4.3. Here in 4.3, we can see the projected change for Colorado in terms of inches on the ground is very small. We're talking about a potential increase of half an inch at most. And that's in your average year And there's a question though, is that half an inch coming all at once? Let's find that out. Let's look at signals for storm intensity. We're going to look at figure 212 for that. So this is a very complex figure as we look at projected changes to precipitation extremes at 2C. I'm happy to say that the Colorado information is pretty consistent across all three, so that gives us more confidence that we might otherwise have related to these intense storm predictions. And I want you to see that Colorado is almost entirely free of these darker blue spots, where those are going to be your super deluges. Deluges dropping 50% more water than your biggest storms today. If you look, a lot of Colorado here is looking pretty light, or is even looking at a reduction in the intensity of storms, a reduction in really extreme precipitation events, meaning hopefully more normal, healthy, gentler tendency of rain in those areas. When you're talking about the Front Range, it looks like the dividing line towards when you move away from your more intense deluge type storms is right around Colorado Springs. Folks in Colorado Springs, that you're seeing that basically every factor is just lining up beautiful for you. Looking towards Denver there, we do see more potential for big storms, but they're not like super crazy. Like that's maybe 25% more rain per storm that you see up in the high mountains there. Denver, we're talking about like maybe 5 to 10% more rain per storm. Still a lot, but it's not like we're talking about there, right? Not too bad. So now we're over in figure 4.5, where I want to show you something interesting related to decreased snowpack expressed in lost inches of snow water equivalent by 2C, which is what we mean here by mid-century. Nice if we were gonna not see it until mid-century, but regardless, remember how I was saying that Colorado's cold outlook is very different from those West Coast mountains? Take a look right there. I'm not saying you look amazing. This doesn't look great, but look at that loss of snow water equivalent. In many of these areas, it's not being adequately replaced by rain equivalent. You saw that you are getting about a half inch more rain. It looks like we're talking about maybe being in the wiggle room there in terms of your total water availability, your total precipitation falling on the state. And that's hard to look at those mountains all along the West Coast there. I hope it also makes you feel grateful in your heart. I feel grateful for Colorado's outlook because I see the relative stability that you have and how precious it is. So let's take it all together. Your water outlook is pretty stable in terms of total precipitation falling on the state. More of your precipitation is going to fall as rain. You're going to want to consider more water storage. More than that, you might need more water storage in order to hold the same amount of water for yourselves, as less of the water volume that falls on the state will be what you might call self-storing in the form of snowpack. So even with getting about the same amount of precipitation, it's important to note that landscapes, they will be drier. Your landscapes will get drier in part because it's going to be hotter and in part because the snow melt's not going to last as long. So water around the year is going to be more uneven. That does indicate increased fire risk, which is not going to surprise you. Let's see how bad it is. You all are tough enough. We can rip this Band-Aid off. All right, so we're in 7.4 now, which is the fire map, and this also is not so bad. I mean, are you looking at increased risk? Yes. You're talking about a 3x to 4x increased risk of large wildfires. When I looked, though, at the updated projections for Idaho, for example, up there on the Panhandle, the story is much worse there. Again, you're looking at challenges, Colorado, but they're relatively manageable for the region, and you are already developing the skills you need to face this reality. So here's what I think this all means. You all know Colorado's very desirable. I want to show you on our real estate price map how desirable we're talking. As you can see here, and apologies if you can't see it, we're going to try and get this changed over away from a red-green scale so that it's more accessible to people who might be colorblind. Colorado is very expensive. And that is one reason why I do not recommend Colorado as a destination, because who can afford it? As you may know, it is already quite crowded and expensive in some parts of Colorado. And I think it's likely food costs will go up faster in Colorado than other parts of the US. I will say, though, I get more commissioned requests for specific placement details regarding Colorado than any other state. I feel like it's worth spending a little more time on Colorado's emerging risks because they go beyond continued extreme weather and increased fire risk. Colorado, you look like you're keeping tolerable margins, but there's not a lot of wiggle room in this system. And part of why I think you have a good resilience outlook is that, like by my place, you already have a ton of extreme weather and crazy flash floods and heat waves and stuff. So you're built tough. When I talk about you not having a lot of wiggle room, it's not with disrespect. You know there's only so much water to go around and that the drought trend in your region is serious. The more people try and build houses in the mountains, the more fire we're going to be looking at. In Colorado, my biggest concerns are overcrowding and stupid development that leads to real fire problems. My second biggest concern is what happens if things get like way crazy and it gets harder and more expensive to ship food up there. Because you already import more food than you produce, and it'd be a heck of a challenge to get you calorie stable as a state. It's just not going to happen. But I don't think you're going to go hungry. I do think food is going to get more expensive in Colorado, and that when you envision your future in Colorado, it's pretty high cost. If you have room for a garden, that might be an economically attractive proposition. Once more, for emphasis, I really do not think that us in the Midwest are going to stop kicking out staple crops. Things would have to get ridiculously collapsed for us to not want to trade with you. I mean, come on, Colorado, and you know you're awesome. Why wouldn't people want to keep trading with you? But you got to think, what's the trade that's going to come out of Colorado? There are a lot of options. There's lots of resources in Colorado. And thinking about sustainability is incredibly important as we consider the challenges and opportunities inherent to onshoring more of America's supply chain. These sustainability issues, we can get some insight into how to handle them as we look towards the Colorado oil and gas industry. This industry, as the country is moving through this energy transition, that industry is getting smaller in Colorado, and that's had some downstream impacts, like shifting the tax basis, some of the funding for schools. From studying this transition, the way it's been impacting people in communities, and approaches folks have been trying to take to address these transition related gaps, we can learn a lot. We could learn more about how to smooth out other transitions towards a truly sustainable economy in this wonderful state. This outlook is so important that we're seeing for Colorado. And folks, it has to be said, sometimes life is not fair. Some places it seems like they get hammered by all the bad things at once. And some people, they're always rolling natural 20s, and every time they crack an egg, they get double yolks, right? Colorado, you're certainly leaning more in the second direction on this outlook today. And if you like Colorado today, warts and all, I think this outlook is an adjustment you all can make and stay in your homes and your communities. I'm so happy for you. Your long experience with extremes has put you all in the right mindset to make the adaptations you're going to need. With that need for action in mind, when I consider Colorado's outlook, my call is that the state will continue to be strong, desirable, probably rather singed. Your biggest resilience task is fire resilience. Communities must avoid the temptation of further urban wildlands intrusion because all that fancy new construction is just going to light on fire, and that'll bring fire further into town. Even if you live in town, you should consider how you can improve your personal fire resilience. And while Colorado has strict legal limits around water harvesting, you are allowed a couple of rain barrels. If I were you, both from a fire resilience and a gardening perspective, I would get those bad boys in. Great Junction, you look likely to grow quite a bit. You're going to want to watch those margins for fire. Southeastern Colorado, I feel for your farming communities. You all are going to be experiencing a very challenging rate of change, and I would be concerned about the desert spreading in your area. You're going to need to really focus on soil conservation. The cover crops are really going to matter. I'm wishing you folks all the best, and I hope that you did take a look at Kansas. We're going to get to Kansas soon. Looks very challenging there. Colorado, I know you're all going to tell me you're already on this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Let's get ready. Folks, thanks for joining us, and thanks so much to all of our supporters, all of our donors, all of our volunteers here in the AR community. I really appreciate the support that I'm receiving from you all so as to continue to be your mad scientist on all things climate. I feel a little embarrassed about this, but my radiator broke and I have a $750 repair. I need to get the car fixed so that I can go to Columbus to the climate migration mapping conference that I'm going to there. I want to bring you the news from there. If you are able to spare anything, I would appreciate it so that I can get the car working again. I do apologize. I don't mean to beg too much. And thanks for considering if you can give. My PayPal link is at the top of my website or on the About page of the YouTube channel. Thanks so much. Hope everyone's doing okay. Bye.